Welcome, friends. Shabbat shalom. You know, for people that just came in, these are the best seats in the house. Right there. Right over there. Over to the right. That's the spot. You want to have a good seat tonight, that's the one. That's the section. Just saying. Just saying my personal opinion. No pressure. No pressure. All right, thank you for letting me tell you what to do. Oh, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Ooh, Rabbi, I don't even know. Are we in the zone?
We still got about 3 more minutes.
Oh, awesome. So keep chatting and schmoozing and hugging your family or doing whatever you need to do or welcoming someone you've never met before. Say hello.
Hopefully the sun goes down just a little bit more so that we're not blinded. We're okay.
It's kind of fun for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's my key? There we go. That's the Shalom. Oh, I'm gonna invite you pre-broadcast. This is like a 2-minute freebie to see if you can let the stress melt off of you. Bye-bye, stress. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. There are enough people here tonight, Rabbi, that I am excited to introduce myself to later that I haven't met yet. So I'm going to just introduce myself now.
Perfect.
My name is Meredith Greenberg, and I'm the cantor at Ner Tamid, and this is...
I'm Rabbi Mark Katz. I'm the rabbi at Temple Ner Tamid.
And this is the band. Here we go. Page 24. Okay. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Nami Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Nami Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Baruchuni, Baruchuni, Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Nami Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, צא איתכם לשלום, יצא איתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש, ברוך הוא, שלום עליכם, שלום עליכם, מלאכי השרת, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש, ברוך, ברוך, ברוך הוא, ברוך הוא.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And to the Zoomiverse and the YouTuberverse as well, welcome.
I was talking to somebody recently about the fact that prayer is not meant to immediately be transformative. We often come to services and we kind of sit there and we say, inspire me. But that's not the way services work, as inspiring as it is to have our band here tonight, who are amazing. Prayer actually is a little bit like the metaphor of learning in Judaism. Once Rabbi Akiva was upset because he was older when he began his studies, until he sat down at a river and noticed water flowing over rocks, and noticed how a drip here and a drip there for many years bore a hole in even the hardest surface. And study, he says, penetrates the heart in such a way and penetrates the mind. A little bit after a little bit can make a huge difference. So you wake up and suddenly years down the line, you're a sage, a scholar. Well, that actually is what prayer is. It's little steps forward, it's drips of water on a rock, it's small pieces of hard work of coming week in and week out until the prayers aren't changed, but rather you are. Until you are a vessel to catch that water with. Until you are different. Tonight, every one of us is taking that small step forward, whatever that step looks like for us. And some of it might be that final drip that finally bores the hole. And the other might just be a piece of water bouncing off that rock until we go about the rest of our day. But I promise you, if you do it enough, you will be changed. You will be different. And my hope is that you leave just a little bit different than you were when you walked in. And so we're going to usher in Shabbat tonight as we prepare to light our candles. And so Rebecca and Tyler tomorrow will become B'nai Mitzvah, and we're so excited for them, and we're going to call them up to the Bima as their family first reads a reading about our candles, lights the candles, and then they lead us in Kiddush, so they can come on up.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
We're going to turn to page number 5 now as we prepare to hear the Kiddush.
And there are plenty of seats up here. No one likes the front, but there's lots of seats.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho Be'ava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher letzion mitzrayim
Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodecha be'ava uvratzon inhaltanu.
Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
We continue our tefillah on page 20. I'm sure we're going to figure out a chair problem.
Yeah, for those who just walked in, I'm going to go ask
We
our
don't want
maintenance
you
to
to
bring some
leave.
more
We
chairs.
want to
Don't
get
worry.
more chairs for you. So come and just hang out. But the good news is that we're all going to stand up in not very long from now. So please join us, page 20. L'chadudi. No, not l'chadudi. Don't join me. And nope, pause.
Wait,
Now we're just a total balagan.
but listen,
The
Ed was
balagan of
so into
balagans.
it. That was awesome.
That was awesome. Okay, pausing because Ronnie is going to take us through our Sfirat HaOmer first.
So each day from the second Seder, we mark this time by marking the Sfirat HaOmer, by counting the Omer. And in essence, we're counting days. But I'll talk about counting days at the end. And you'll see that there's a screen up there. And even though in English it says I'm going to read the Hebrew, but I'm going to ask you to join as if you were reading this by yourself. Hineni muchan umezuman lekayem mitzvat aser shel Sfirat HaOmer. Ready? I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. So this is when we count the days. You doing the tune? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Sfirat HaOmer, al Sfirat HaOmer, al Sfirat HaOmer, al Sfirat HaOmer. As we actually count these days in Hebrew, Hayom Arba'a Asar Yom Shehem Shnei Shavuot LaOmer. Today is 14 days, which is 2 weeks of the Omer. Today's focus, today's personal characteristic that we focus on is Malchut Sheb Gvura, majesty within strength. We're all channels for the holy, here to be of service, as in the word Hineni, here we are. Our lives are our offerings. May we serve with humility and strength. As we look inwardly towards our majesty, Malchut, within the strength, Givurah, ask yourself, there are 2 questions. Matt, in what ways do I need to be more gentle? Give yourself some time to think about that. And our second question, what are the practices and rituals that guide and sustain me? Carry this insight as you have thought about within each day as we travel on our journey. And don't just count the days, make each of those days count. Shabbat Shalom.
Ani, thank you so much. And if you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the practice of Sfirat HaOmer, spiritual counting of the days between the second day of Passover and the night before Shavuot, then you should come to the New Moon Circle on Tuesday night, which is what we're going to be talking about and praying and chanting and hanging out, probably in this very room. So come on over at 8 p.m. and celebrate the new moon of Iyar with moi. Page 20.
Page 20. L'chadodi.
בני פני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת לקבילה לה לה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבילה שמור וזכור בדיבורך ישמיענו אל ימך אדוני אחד ושמואך לשם ותפארת ולתחילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת לקבילה לה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבילה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מכאן למנשוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבילה verse 5 התעוררי תעוררי כבורך ומיורי יורי יורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת נקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת if you're
We
able
rise together and face the door.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצלה תוחמוני עם סגולה בואי חיה בואי חלה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני פני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת לקבילה לך לך דודי לקראת לקראת קלה בני שבת נקבילה
We continue standing, page 28.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני together ברוך
Adonai,
המבורך
Hamevorah,
לעולם
Olam,
ברכו את אדוני המבורך page 28 תברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם לעולם ועד ברוך אדוני ברכו לעולם ועד one more time ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברכו את אדוני המבורך. נא לשבת, you may be seated. Page 31. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 32. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amicha ahavta Amcha ahaveta Torah u'mitzvot Kibbur mishpatim Otanu limadita Otanu limadita Alikan Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu ובתקומנו נסיע בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו. So we take a moment to just see if we can drop in to whatever is presence for you, to whatever makes your heart know that love has brought you here. And when we find blocks to that, our tradition tells us, listen to the oneness anyway. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Page 36. Ve'ahaveta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha vehayu hadivarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha ayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך בשערך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens, with me, the high heavens declare your glory, may earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered at Sinai. We bound ourselves to your way, inspired by prophets and instructed by sages. Time and again we overcame oppressive. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. So there's a lot that we can pick at in that text, a lot of things that we can look at and say, that's not right for me. That's not how I think about God. That's not how I think about my role in this world. So then you decide what's going to drive you to justice and peace. Don't call it Adonai. Do whatever you want. But as long as we get there, because if we don't get there, we're nowhere. Page 40. Yai dai lai lai la la lai, yai dai lai lai la lai la lai, ya lai la la, yai la la, yai la la, yai la. Mi chamo chaba elimado, mi chamo chanezar bakodesh, nora tegirot otzevele, nora tegirot otzevele. Malechutecha ra'u evanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam.
Let's hear you.
Adonai Yimelo Leolam Vaed. Adonai Yimelo Leolam Vaed. One more time, man, yai dai lai la lai, yai dai lai lai la lai. Ya la la la, ya ya la, ya la la, ya la la, ya la la. ונאמר, יפרדה אדוני את יעקב, גאלו מיד חזק, ממנו באו חטא אדוני, גאל ישראל.
We're on page number 42 as we turn our attention either to the page or to the screen, and we join together first in Hashkivenu and then in a creative song that speaks about the themes of what it means to one day dream of a world that could be.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor zetenu u'vainu l'chaim u'shalom And I thank God I'm breathing. And I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds me, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more, no, there'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, you one day, one day, you one day, one day, one day, one day. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
We're on the bottom of page 44. Yismechu. Those who keep Shabbat by calling it delight will rejoice in your realm.
ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת כולם ישביעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. והשביל רצית בו וקידשת שבת. חמדת ימי אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. יזכר למעשה וראשית שבת. יזכר למעשה וראשית שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלאכותיך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת.
We move now, page 46, and after this opening meditation, we'll move into silence through page number 62. When you're finished, you can be seated, and we'll join together afterwards on page 60 with the words of Shalom Rav. We rise together, page 46.
Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi yagid, תהילתך.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
So if you are still in the midst of your private prayer, do not let our communal lifting up of the blessing for peace stop you. It can hold you. We turn, for those who are ready, to page 60. We lift our voices up together, turning our hearts towards this aspiration to know peace fully and wholly. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amecha Itasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amecha Itasim Leolam. Ki ata Melech Adon Lichol HaShalom, Ki ata Melech Adon, Lichol HaShalom, Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amecha, Itasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amecha, Itasim Leolam. B'tov בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל מכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך, בשלומך. We breathe together. Shalom Rav al Yisrael
טסים לעולם. שלום, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, היא טסים לעולם. טסים, טסים, טסים לעולם. טסים, טסים לעולם.
I'll ask you to join me on page 253, and as you turn to that page, I'd like you to think of those that perhaps are not going to be on our list on the screen, but perhaps those as well, but those people in your hearts and minds that you think of when you think someone needs healing, of body, mind, or spirit. Mishaberak avotenu vimotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, u'yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. And if you'd like to, you can add those names in the chat if you're on Zoom. But if you're with us in person and you'd like to say the name out loud as I look around, please do so. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say Amen. Misheberach avotenu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha liavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm not, my head isn't cut off, right? Last time I was in this room, I gave a whole sermon, and all you could see was my chin down. All right. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We find ourselves at an auspicious time in the Jewish calendar. And I want to speak a little bit about that time and a little bit about what it meant for my identity and what it means for Jewish identity in general. We find ourselves between two holidays. Now, they're not the religious holidays that one would expect. Instead, there is what scholars call civil religious holidays. They're holidays that at the core are actually civil holidays that have religious significance to them. And if you want to understand civil religion, the best way to think about it is that there's rituals and there's even values and feelings assigned to things like the 4th of July in America, right? Well, in Israel, and then out into the rest of the world, there's certain key moments that are civilly religious as well. A few days ago, we commemorated one of them, which was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance. And though not religious in the sense that the Torah speaks about it, it was no less holy when we gathered both our teens in our sanctuary to hear an account from Lisa Wasser Berlin about her father's survival, or when we went to B'nai Keshet for the Greater Montclair-wide commemoration. There was holiness to that day. And there will be holiness to later in this coming week when we observe two holidays that are back to back. Yom HaZikaron, which is the Memorial Day in Israel, to commemorate those soldiers who fell in battle and those people who fell from terrorist attacks. And then we go from the low of Yom HaZikaron to the high of Yom HaAtzmaut. And we celebrate the fact that we are standing here only a few generations from the birth of the State of Israel, a miracle for all of us. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the complexity of Israel because we have an amazing person coming in, Gilly Getz, who has a one-man play, about a 20-minute play that he's going to do during the sermon slot about the tension of having nuanced conversations about Israel between him and his dad. And then after we grab a little nosh, he's going to host a conversation for us to talk about what that means to us. But today, I actually want to reflect not necessarily on Israel itself, but on the package, on the Holocaust and Israel together. Because what many people don't realize is that the Jewish community made a turn around the 1970s. It may not have been intentional. It's not like a bunch of people sat in a room and decided this. But it happened that if you look at the curriculum of religious schools, starting around the early 1970s and moving up, the transition point being about my childhood, the key to Jewish identity for the Jewish community were two things. It was Holocaust and it was Israel. And if you wanted to understand what made a Jew, it was their relationship to those two things, to Holocaust and to Israel. It pervaded much of what I imagine many of us who are sitting in this room learned when we went to Hebrew school. But there began to be a turn in the late 90s and early 2000s when I came of age. When suddenly my generation, the millennials, started asking themselves, is this indeed what we want our identity to be about? And we began to push back on those two things. I remember being a strident teenager and saying to my parents, I can't believe that we're basing our identity on a land far away from us and on a tragedy that happened to us. And I began listing, I remember, things that were important to Jewish identity that were not those two things. I pushed back and said, how come we don't talk about God enough? How come we don't talk about prayer enough? Social justice should be what we concentrate on. I talked about the fact that holidays are often glossed over in religious school, and except for the big ones, which we hit year after year after year, that a sense of history began at biblical times. We nodded to the rabbinic era around the years of the destruction of the temple, 70 CE, and suddenly there was no history until the Holocaust and the birth of the State of Israel. It just did not exist in my education, and I imagine in many of yours. And so my generation, looking at a world where Israel and the Holocaust were so amplified, but yet we've had complicated relationships to both, pushed back and began rejecting both of them. And initiatives were formed out of millennials, which concentrated on almost everything but. But as I've gotten older, I've returned back to those two themes, to Holocaust and to Israel, and realized that in my stridency as a youth, the big problem with rejecting those as pillars of Jewish identity were that I had no idea what I was talking about. Because actually, the Holocaust is not monolithic, nor is Israel. They are nuanced, they are complex, they are alive, they are rich, and they are seats for other conversations as well. You can't talk about the Holocaust, I realized, without asking the question, where was God? Suddenly, the Holocaust became a platform to talk about the theology that I so desperately felt that I missed. It was just a missed opportunity by my teachers not asking the question. Suddenly, I began realizing that memory is crucial to the Jewish identity, and trauma is crucial to the Jewish identity. And I began understanding that modern anti-Semitism cannot be understood without drawing a straight line to the traumas of the past, the most important of which, for all of us, is the Holocaust. Most of us don't go through the day without thinking how our traumas related to ancient Rome or related to Christian Europe during the Crusades, or looking at the way that the Inquisition informed us. It's true that those are embedded in our identity, but the Holocaust is the best example and the best emblematic thing for understanding why it is that when a swastika is written on a desk in Montclair High School, we get so upset. And then there's Israel. Israel, which felt to me when I was a kid like basically the deeds of the government. I started to ask myself when I was a kid, when I was young, when I was a teenager and in college, do I agree with what is going on the ground? Do I agree with the way Palestinians are treated? Do I agree with the occupation? Do I agree with what's happening in the territories? And for me, that became the sole question that informed why Israel mattered, until I grew up a little bit. And I actually realized that Zionism at its core, just like the Holocaust, can be the seat of every single fundamental question in Judaism and a platform to explore them. Just as the Holocaust helps us ask questions about memory and about theology and about trauma, Israel helps us explore the question of what is the essence of Judaism and what is a successful Jewish life looking like. Because as we look at Israel, we can use Israel as a way to ask that question. Israel also becomes a platform to understand pluralism. Reform Judaism does not have a seat at the table in the way that it needs to. And so it helps us to understand why that might be. And to understand, as we struggle with pluralism in this country, how it could be true in that one as well. Israel will help us understand the place of Jewish culture and the place of Jewish pride. Israel can help us understand what it really means to walk the walk and be what the prophet Isaiah said as the light upon the nations. There is no theme that cannot be found within Israel and within the Holocaust. They themselves are not pillars of Jewish identity. Instead, they are vessels to hold the other pieces of Jewish identity that bolster and that raise us up. And to ignore them, to throw them out, to be dismissive and to call them monolithic is to lose the nuance and the essence of where they come from. Which means that we can use this time, the time between Holocaust Remembrance Day and the two different holidays for the remembrance of those who have died and the celebration of the state of Israel that are coming up this week, as a way to hold both of those identities together. Now, to return back to history for a second, the great experiment of the past couple hundred years has been, can Jews enter fully into society? And America is a platform for asking that question. It began in France in the early 1800s when Jews were finally granted citizenship. And Jews didn't walk, they ran from the ghetto so that they could enter in, they could vote, they could be full members of society. Emancipation, which is what it was called, is one of the most important things to ever happen to the Jewish people. It is the reason that every single one of us feels comfortable potentially wearing a kippah when we walk down the street. But I realized that when I was younger, one of the reasons that I struggled so much with both Israel and with the Holocaust was that both of them are statements for why that great experiment doesn't work. The Holocaust, because one of the most emancipated people were Germans pre-World War II. And the second, because Israel is a statement that maybe this experiment of American Jewry won't work, and we might need it, Zionism, to help us and to save us. One of the keys, one of the most important things, is to understand that despite those feelings, you can at the same time believe in the value of emancipation, believe in the value of being an American Jew, believe that our ability to be fully here is not at all threatened by what happened in World War II and what is across the sea in Israel. That instead we can memorialize the Holocaust and we can celebrate Israel while at the same time being fully us here. And the way to do that is from time to time to put away the complicated feelings that you have or potentially have to both, and to understand that they are holy in their own way, because they have so much richness, so much texture, and so much nuance to them. Judaism is alive, it is real, and it is so much more than the Holocaust in Israel. And at the same time, the Holocaust in Israel can hold all of Judaism within it. And if you look at it with those wide open eyes, with that nuanced view, and if you allow yourself to explore the boundaries of what Judaism can be within both of them, you can find the richness of this week, and you can return back to those 1970s and say that maybe if they had done it right in religious school, they wouldn't have been wrong by emphasizing both of them. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to move now into our concluding section of our prayers. We move to Aleinu, page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula l'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo samchelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Please be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those we've loved and who we've lost. This Shabbat we recall the following individuals, and I'll invite you to rise in your seats as I call the name of your loved one. Wynn Adler, Helen Axelrod, Samuel Berger, Alan Briskin, Mona Cohn, Samuel Cohen, David Edelman, Joshua Gendel, Ruth Getzoff, Eva Gersh, Evelyn Glasser, Joel Goldberg, Ted Goldberg, Dorothy Hoffman Redlich, Joseph Jacobs, Eleanor Kaplan, Lorraine Kaplan, Molly Kaplan, Rosalind Doris Karras, Sarah Laura Keels, Philip Kirschner, Leah Klein, Julius Krulowitz, Bertha Kurtzman, Milton Lee, Yetta Mandelkern, David Marion, Alan P. Neckers, Freddie Pressman. Benjamin Rich, Joseph Ruffalo, David Schechner, Fanny Shapiro, Shirley Sherman, Paul Singman, Roberta Slifkin, Leslie Smith, Carol Spencer, Benjamin Stoutmauer, Marina Stern, Frida Tilkin, Deborah Kaner, Weidenbaum, Irving Weiss, Wendell Jacob Weiss. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, We remember Robert Krentzman, beloved husband of Barbara Krentzman. Marianne Kramer, beloved mother of Chris Kramer. Leanne Adler, beloved stepmother of Deb Alper. Quentin Palmer, beloved son of Casey and Jack Palmer. Nan Barkan, beloved aunt of Emily Goldberg. Miriam Schlang, beloved mother of Nami Rotke. And Ellie Smilo, beloved aunt of Perry Smilo. In addition, I'll invite you to rise if there's anyone for whom you were in your 1 year period of mourning for, or if you are observing a yard site that may not be on this list, whether family or friend. Page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, v'yamad yivrach yiratzeh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayei achon v'yom echon uv'chayet echo Beit Yisrael, b'hagala uv'izman kariv v'imru amin. Yehi shmei Rabba mavarach le'olam u'omei almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram b'yamav v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. And I apologize if I didn't say please rise right before we began. We have a few announcements before our closing song. The first is...
The first is that I ran into the service so quickly that you didn't get to really welcome people and say all the awesome welcoming things that you usually do.
I did, yeah.
I know.
So what that means is... If you had to go to the bathroom, I'm sure you found it.
Yeah,
If you
but
needed
more
hearing
about
assistant
meeting someone you
devices.
don't know. More about that part.
So I always end that little introduction by saying, basically, if there's someone that you don't know, make sure to introduce yourself to them. We are all responsible for creating a welcoming community. And so therefore, you are all on the front lines of making sure that there is no one who does not get wished a Shabbat Shalom. There's no one who stands alone during Oneg. So please introduce yourself to them. Afterwards, there's a nosh in the back. And thank you to Tyler and to Rebecca and to your family for making it happen. And we're so excited for you for tomorrow. So tomorrow's schedule, we have services at 10 a.m. here. Or we have in another room, actually, a 6th grade retreat happening in this room. And there'll be a separate service for that. I don't think there's any introductory spiritual practice, but Torah studies at 8:30. Everybody got an email today, if you're on our email list, about an initiative that we began and that we're going to continue to do over the course of the summer. So you heard me announce the name during Kaddish, Fred Pressman. Fred is a beloved congregant, a major leader within our community, and he passed away 2 years ago. And in honor and in memory of him, we are setting up a garden headed by Eileen Opatot, who can kind of raise her hands so that if people want to get involved, they can come and speak with her. But it's going to be actually in what was Freddie's garden in Ronnie Pressman's backyard. And if you want to be a part of that, all the food that's grown there is going to be donated to help those in need, which is exactly the vision of what Freddie would have loved. And so hopefully you can sign up for that. In addition, we've got lots of other things happening throughout the course of the next few weeks. As I mentioned, next Friday night, we have an actor and teacher coming to the community to do about a 20-minute one-act play during the sermon slot about the tension between him and his dad, they're both Israeli, to talk about what is going on the ground in Israel and how they just don't talk politics, but how they had to talk politics when the latest Gaza war began. And it's a really moving play. I've read it. And after he performs it, and then after services end, we will come back together and we will get a chance to discuss it and talk about how do we have nuanced conversations about Israel. In addition, our big fundraiser is coming up. It's a 5K road race, walk or run, and then we're going to come back here for a brunch. And it's in honor of two really special people, Lori Schifano, who is our temple administrator, and Maribel Leon, who's the administrator of our religious school, both of whom, give or take, are about 20 years here. And so we're going to celebrate their tenure here, and we are going to get a chance to raise funds, much needed funds, for our congregation, and to use those to do good as we've always been doing. Cantor, you've got some announcements?
Come and celebrate the new moon with me next Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. And Shavuot is sort of, well, too soon for that.
Yeah, what I'll say, there's one more announcement, which on the 12th, we're really excited to be able to welcome Matt Platkin to the congregation. If you don't know who Matt is, he is the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey. And he's going to come. We're co-sponsoring this with a couple different organizations. And the Attorney General is a really important job in New Jersey. He's on the front lines of trying to figure out what's going to happen with racial justice, with education, with criminal justice reform. And so hopefully you can come and hear kind of what's in the works in New Jersey, because there's a lot that he's working on, and there's a lot that he campaigned on that we're really excited to see come to fruition. So that'll be on the 12th, and hopefully you can join us for that. And one more, I guess. We just have so much stuff. On the 5th, there's an open meeting for those who want to get involved with more social action initiatives. If you're interested in that, you can talk to Amy. She'll raise her hand right here, and she's going to host that on the 5th as well. So with that, plenty more. Check your email. We're going to close with Oseh Shalom. And thank you to our band.
Thank you so much, band. And Ed.
Oseh Shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Once more. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom